Kinshasa, Zaire, October 29th, 1974, 2:14 a.m. On the third floor of the Intercontinental Hotel, the door of room 301 was knocked lightly. Once, twice, the third time, slightly harder. George Foreman sat up in bed. Tomorrow morning at 10 a.m., he would step into the biggest boxing match in the world, Rumble in the Jungle, the World Heavyweight Championship, 60,000 people in the stadium, millions watching on television, and his opponent, Muhammad Ali, 32 years old, hungry, dangerous. George had been trying to sleep for 35 minutes. He couldn't. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw his opponent, Ali's dancing feet, those fast punches, that endless energy. The door knocked again. George got up, tense. His security guard was outside the door. He would have called, but he wasn't calling. He slowly approached the door, looked through the peephole, and froze. In the corridor, alone, wearing a tracksuit, stood Muhammad Ali. George quickly opened the door. "What do you want?" Ali smiled. That famous, wide, worldwide recognized smile. "I want to talk." "We're fighting tomorrow," said George, his voice low and hard. "I know," Ali said in a calm voice. "Tomorrow I'll beat you to death in the ring. But tonight, we're just two men. Can I come in?" George looked at Ali for a long time. In his gaze was suspicion, unease, and something else, curiosity. Finally, he stepped back, opened the door wider. Ali walked in. The room was small, simple. This was Zaire's finest hotel, but modest by American standards. Single bed, small table, 2 chairs. George closed the door, turned to Ali. "Sit," said Ali, as if it were his own room. He sat in one of the chairs, relaxed, crossed his legs. George sat across from him, too shocked to remain standing. "Why did you come?" George finally asked. Ali leaned forward, hands on his knees, eyes on George's eyes. "Because tomorrow, with the world watching, we'll fight. We'll try to knock each other down. We'll try to hurt each other. But tonight, nobody's watching. And I wanted to talk to you. As a human being." George frowned. "Is this a game? Mind games?" "No," Ali said quietly. "This is two men getting to know each other before they try to kill each other." There was silence. Long, heavy silence. From outside came the night sounds of Kinshasa. Distant drum sounds, street vendors shouting, the hotel's air conditioning motor humming. Finally, George spoke. "What will we talk about?" Ali leaned back. "Tell me. Who are you, George? The world knows you as the monster. Big man, 40 fights, 40 knockouts. But who are you really?" George lowered his head, clasped his hands together. Didn't speak for a long time. Ali waited, didn't rush. Then George began to speak. "I grew up in Texas, Houston's poorest area. My father wasn't there. My mother was a cleaning lady. She cleaned white families' houses, me and 6 siblings. To find food, sometimes we'd look in garbage cans." Ali nodded, listened. George continued. "When I was 14, I joined a street gang. I had no other choice. I learned to fight. I learned to beat people. Then boxing found me, or I found boxing. And I understood that my fists could give me a way out." "It saved you," Ali said quietly. "Yes," George said, "but it also destroyed me. Now everyone thinks I'm a monster. In the ring, I knock people out, but nobody knows me. They just see my fist." Ali leaned forward. "I see you, George." George raised his head, looked at Ali. "I see you," Ali repeated, "because I was in your place too. I grew up in Louisville, black neighborhood. They stole my bicycle when I was 12. I went to call the police. The police laughed. 'Black kid, bicycle, find it yourself.' That day, I understood. I'm alone in this world. Nobody will protect me. I have to protect myself." George listened, silently. Ali continued. "Boxing made me famous. I became world champion. But then Vietnam came. They wanted to draft me. I didn't want to go. I said no. And they took everything. My championship, my license, my freedom. 3 years I couldn't fight. 3 years. My best years. Gone." "Why did you come back?" George asked. Ali smiled. "Because this is me. Boxing is me. They wanted me to leave. But I came back because I understood that I'm not just a boxer. I'm a symbol. And symbols don't die. They fall, but they get up." George nodded. "Tomorrow, one of us will fall. You or me." Ali's smile disappeared. His face became serious. "I don't know. But what I know is, tomorrow, with the world watching, we'll beat each other. But tonight, in this room, we're just two men. Two men who walked the same path, felt the same pain, saw the same dreams." George looked at Ali for a long time. Then he did something that surprised even himself. He spoke, really spoke. "I'm afraid of everyone," he said quietly. "Nobody knows. Everyone thinks I make everyone afraid, but I can't sleep every night from fear. What if I lose? If I lose, who am I? Just a knockout machine? Ali leaned forward, put his hand on George's shoulder. George, if you lose, you're still George Foreman. You're still a champion. You're still human. One fight doesn't define you. You define yourself. George's eyes filled. He didn't cry, but his eyes filled. Why aren't you afraid of me? Ali leaned back, thought. I am afraid, he finally said. Of course I'm afraid. You're the strongest man in the world. You can knock me out. But fear doesn't stop me. Because I know. Fear isn't weakness. Fear is humanity. And I'm not afraid to be human. The two men in that small room looked at each other. Opponents, enemies, two men who tomorrow would beat each other to death. But tonight, just two human beings. Ali stood up. I need to go. Angelo's probably looking for me. But George, I want to tell you something. George stood up, waited. Tomorrow, I'll beat you, Ali said, his voice calm but determined. In the 8th round, I'll knock you down. I'll become world champion. But I want you to know, I'll beat you with respect, because you're a champion, even if you lose. George nodded. I'll beat you too. But you're right, with respect. Ali walked to the door, put his hand on the handle. He turned, looked at George one last time. Tonight, this conversation is just between us. The world won't know. Tomorrow they'll see two enemies. But we know. We're two brothers. He opened the door, went out. The corridor was empty, dimly lit. George stood at the door, watched Ali leave. Ali reached the end of the corridor, turned, waved, then disappeared. George closed the door, returned to the bed. But this time he didn't lie down. He sat, thought about Ali's words. And for the first time that night, the fear lessened a bit. The next day, October 30th, 1974, 10 a.m., Stade du 20 Mai, Kinshasa, 60,000 people screaming, drums playing, Zaire flag waving, the world watching, the biggest boxing match in history about to begin. Ali entered the ring. The crowd went crazy. Ali, Bomaye, Ali, Bomaye. Ali, kill him. George entered the ring. The crowd booed. They didn't want George. He was the American monster. Ali was their hero. Center ring. The referee giving instructions. Ali and George stood facing each other, eyes in each other's eyes. Nobody knew. 8 hours ago, in a hotel room, these two men had been human. Ali nodded slightly. George nodded too. A small movement. Nobody noticed, but they knew. The bell rang. It lasted 8 rounds. The tactic that would be known in history as rope-a-dope. Ali leaned on the ropes, let George hit him. Round by round, George got tired. Ali waited, patiently, intelligently. In the 8th round, George was tired, heavy, slow. Ali saw his chance. 5 punches. Fast, sharp, perfect. George staggered. One more punch. George went down. The referee started counting. 1, 2, 3. George tried to get up. 4, 5, 6. He stood up but had no balance. 7, 8. The referee called it. Knockout. Muhammad Ali, new world champion. The crowd went wild. Ali jumped into the ring, raised his arms. I told you. I told you. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted. But Ali did something that very few noticed. He turned to George. George was still on the ground, sitting on his knees. Ali went to him, extended his hand. George looked at his hand, then took it. Ali lifted him up. The two men in the ring stood. Ali whispered in George's ear, "You fought well, brother." George smiled. A painful, tired smile. "You too, brother." At the press conference, reporters bombarded Ali with questions. "What do you think about George Foreman?" Ali answered, "He was my strongest opponent, but more importantly, he's a champion. He lost, but he didn't lose honor. I beat him with respect." A reporter asked, "Did you talk to him before the fight?" Ali paused, then smiled. "No, I don't talk to my opponents before fights." He lied, because that night, that conversation was sacred. It didn't belong to the world. It belonged only to two men. 23 years later, 1997, Louisville, Kentucky. Muhammad Ali was battling Parkinson's disease. His speech had become difficult. His hands trembled, but his spirit was still strong. George Foreman came to visit him. He was 50 now, no longer a boxer. He had become a preacher, giving people hope. In Ali's house, in the living room, two old opponents sat facing each other. George spoke. Ali listened. "Do you remember?" George said. "That night, in Kinshasa, in my room?" Ali nodded, his eyes shining. "That night you taught me something," George said. "You taught me that losing isn't the end. You taught me that I'm more than a boxer. I'm a human being, and that lesson saved me. After I lost, I didn't fall apart, because you had shown me I'm still valuable. Ali put his hand on George's hand. He couldn't speak, but his eyes spoke. George continued, the world remembers that fight, but I remember that night when you came to my room. Because that night, you reminded me of my humanity. Ali nodded, smiled. George stood up, about to leave, but he stopped at the door, turned. One more thing, he said. Can I tell the world? That night, in my room, what we talked about? Ali thought, for a long time, then shook his head side to side. No. George understood. He smiled. You're right. That night was ours, only ours. Muhammad Ali passed away in 2016. At his funeral were thousands of people. World leaders, athletes, poets. George Foreman was there too. He gave a speech. Muhammad Ali beat me in the ring, but more importantly, he taught me to be human. One night, a long time ago, he gave me a lesson, and that lesson has carried me to this day. He never said what they talked about that night, because that night belonged only to two men, and that night was more valuable than the biggest boxing match in history, because that night, two opponents, two enemies, became two human beings, and that is more important than any victory.